startup embracing SaaS for international success. And as the keynote speaker, today we have with us Mr. Hussein Ilyas, founder and CEO, Wind App. Let us welcome Mr. Ilyas on stage, please.
Hello, everyone, and thank you. So, I'll start off with a little bit of introduction about myself. I'm Ilyas, founder of Wind and as well as of Pathao, right? So my claim to fame is that 7 years ago at this point, we started Pathao in a garage with just 3 friends, scaled that company up to 1,000 people by the time I left. Right now, serving over 8 million users, both in Bangladesh, Nepal, doing food delivery, ride sharing, payments, BNPL, e-commerce delivery, everything basically. That being said, I left Palo last year to start Wind. And at Wind, we are trying to basically recreate a PayPal, but on Web3 technologies, right? And I'll tell you a lot more about it. But this is a keynote not just about how you can unlock the potential of startups, which I think Jai, Shuhai, and others talked already about, but also about how I took also the decision of moving just away from a Bangladesh-based company and trying to create a global company, right? So how do we go to the next slide?
Slides change করছেন
Okay, but it's screen. Trying to get the slides on. Is that? It's good. Okay, there we go. Thank you. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of history about the software industry of Bangladesh as a whole, right? The ICT industry of Bangladesh as a whole. And yeah. And the way I like to think of it is that we are in our third stage, right? The first stage is really started off with closed source software. Softwares like Bijoy. Remember Bijoy, anyone? Right? And they came up with a concept, which was, it was a proprietary license, it was a closed source license, similar to, let's say, Photoshop 5 or Windows XP, where we were to buy a software, and the expectation was that we would get that software for life, right? And that's what happened, whether it's Windows XP or Bijoy. Once we bought it, we got it for a lifetime. And because we got it for a lifetime, we actually had to pay a higher price. Now, think of it like this. Photoshop 5 used to cost what? I think $200, $300. Versus now, when you take Photoshop as a SaaS service, that is about $20 a month, right? So there is, and the reason for this discrepancy is that you used to buy it for a lifetime value. Now you're buying for a monthly value and you're paying forever, right? Moving on from that, from paying once, now you have moved on to, let's say, paying for services, right? So already mentioned about Pathao, or there are services like Bcash as well, where you are paying a transactional service every time you take a ride-sharing service, take a food delivery, or even send payments. You pay for the service itself, not really for the software. What the software really allows you to do is it allows you to distribute your service on a scalable manner to a lot more people very, very quickly, and enjoy network effects and such. But again, software is the user experience that you get, but not the service itself. And then you have software as a service, right? And this is where you have the SaaS software that are hosted in AWS, Azure, somewhere else. And that allows you to reach out to anyone, and you don't really need to understand, for most of the customers, that, hey, what is your hardware requirements? Because this is hosted, right? The ability to distribute your products goes up. It is much more scalable. And again, since you're paying partial fee, whether it's a monthly fee, weekly fee, or even a yearly fee, you're paying a smaller amount of money. And that makes it much more scalable in nature. So for this presentation, I actually took a lot of help from Shubhai from ILS, Galib as well from Funded Next, Apploy, and Wind, trying to get all of their experience into how they have also unlocked this global potential of startups. Now, before I go into global, let's talk about a little bit about local. Why hasn't local SaaS taken, gotten enough attention yet, right? And the reason really is, I think, twofold. Number one is our payment system is still broken, right? We have a technical problem that we can't support SaaS. The one example I like to draw over here, especially for retail customers, is a service similar to Chorky, right? I think we all know Chorky is very similar to Netflix. But in Netflix, when you subscribe, you just pay, add your credit card details or debit card details once, and that's about it, right? And how many times did you have to actively think that, hey, do I want to renew my Netflix subscription? Not a lot, right? Whereas because we don't have an active payment system over here, let's say, when you use something like Chorky, we adopted a system of topping up, similar to, FlexiLoad, right? You have to top up every 6 months to continue using Chorky. And every time you make that decision, every time you top up, you're actively making a decision that, hey, do I want to make a purchase or do I not want to make a purchase? And that creates this friction. So, there is this technical challenge of doing all of this. And the other reason is really, and this is a theme for also SMEs and enterprise markets, is that we've just been spoiled by free. ছোটবেলা থেকে আমরা দেখে আসতেছি যে কেউ কিন্তু সফটওয়্যার জন্য পে করে না. I talked about Windows XP and Photoshop, but how many people have actually bought it, right? We were always used to buying CDs or pirating CDs out of this, and we still think that, hey, everything should be free, and that has really hampered the growth of the SaaS market in Bangladesh. In SME markets, the focus still remains on free. This is the data that I got from actually Shubhai, which is that in Bangladesh, there are 40,000 plus e-commerce stores, right, operating right now. Most of them, almost all of them, are using a variant of free e-commerce websites, whether it's WooCommerce, whether it's something else, right? If you compare that same thing with, a similar country like Pakistan, you'll find that there is a lot more people who are willing to get, pay for software. So whereas in Bangladesh, you have only 200 Shopify stores, in Pakistan, which is a pretty similar demographic, you have 8,000 plus e-commerce stores operating out of there, right? And that is, again, that mentality of free that sort of, comes in over here. If you try to go for enterprise software, right? If you want to sell software to larger enterprises such as MNCs, the problem over there is, the Unilevers, the Nestles of the world, they are not going to, make a decision to purchase a software from here because most of the time they don't have the authority to, right? So what they do is they wait for people from their headquarters to give them a decision that, hey, use this particular HR software, use this particular enterprise ERP, right? And that's what they have to adopt. So they have the willingness to buy, the propensity to buy, but they cannot buy because they don't have that decision-making powers. The other larger organizations, let's say banks, for example, these people can also spend, but now that they can spend, now they prefer to buy foreign brands, right? Because we still haven't developed that branding image that, hey, we can actually create high quality softwares over here, right? And honestly, once you only have 40 banks over here, maybe about 50 or 60 large corporations. So again, the market is small regardless. The mentality of entrepreneurs are also different, right? We talked about it in the last panel that there is a lot of Bangladesh centricity, right? That we are in Bangladesh, we know Bangladesh market, therefore we have to create a product for Bangladesh. And while that is good, for SaaS, we don't have that exposure. We don't have that uh, belief that we can actually create something from here that we can also sell outside, right? And that is just that. That is just that we lack that knowledge. We haven't read enough, I would say, TechCrunch or the information to understand what's going on outside of Bangladesh, right? Um, you know, there was once upon a time I talked to this investor, right? And I was pitching to him about, how Bangladesh is a great destination for software. And I said that, hey, Bangladesh has 180 million people. It's a great country, right? You should invest over here. And you know what they said? He said that, oh, it's great you're the eighth largest country, but you're not the seventh largest, or the sixth largest, or the third largest, right? Um, Ultimately, of that 180 million people, how many people can actually buy a product that you're selling, right? 180 million people won't buy it, right? How many people can actually afford to, I don't know, even ride a pathao? Not a lot, right? Most people outside of these Dhaka areas are not really able to afford a lot of basic products, let alone software. So it's important that we look out. And finally, we tend to undersell ourselves, right? We tend to think that, hey, what do we have right now? And we try to think about that, but sometimes we don't really think about what is possible, right? Softwares like, if you look at India, softwares like Zoho, softwares like Freshdesk, these are excellent tools that came out, and they are all built from there, right? And we try to recreate another Freshdesk, another Zoho, but we stop thinking about what else can we build, right? What can we just not copy, but what can we build uniquely for ourselves? That being said, there are still challenges that entrepreneurs over here continue to face, right? Number one, I would say that there is a lack of talent, right? Personally, I love the engineering talent over here, but I do think that there is a distinct lack of both product as well as growth talent, right? Product talent in the sense that, who are you, buying, who are you, selling the product to? There's someone who has to interface both with the engineering team and with the customers, right? And that product talent is extremely lacking. I struggle to sometimes explain product to people when I try to hire product people, because all I get are engineers, right? All I get are salespeople. But product is a very distinct category, and there's probably only about 100 product managers in the entirety of Bangladesh, and that's how difficult it is to find for that segment. Growth, sales, marketing for these international customers has been talked about before, but also very different from when you're selling over here. I'm going to talk about a bit more of how to solve some of these challenges on the later slides. But how do you sell to international customers is a talent that we just don't have yet. The legal system that are facing these entrepreneurs are also very opaque. And I say that because when you are dealing with international customers, they are paying you in USD. There is no simple way to receive USD in Bangladesh. The simplest way is you have to start off with starting an entity outside, whether it's in USA, Singapore, Dubai, anywhere else which can accept USD. But how do you actually do that? Not a lot of people still are sure about, right? Ultimately, however, if you need to build a SaaS product, if you are building a SaaS product, you have to have an entity outside. And that leads to international payments continuing to be difficult, right? Once you have an entity, it gets easier, but if you don't, then it's obviously much more difficult. Now, the Bangladeshi SaaS landscape itself is very nascent, right? When I was researching for this topic, when I was looking out that who are the people who are actually actively operating out of here but catering to outside customers, some names come up which are which are doing an amazing job. whether it's, Employee, whether it's Funded Next, whether it's, even Doric or Zoom Shaper or VDevs. These are people who are, you don't really hear about. They are kind of quiet ultimately in the Bangladesh market because they don't need to be, right? They don't need to shout out their name. They don't need to come to these startup conferences because they already have a customer base which is much more international and they're very over there. And this is a segment that is very attractive just because of how high margin it can be at scale, right? Most businesses struggle to have, let's say, 10% margin or 20% margin. A SaaS business at scale can reach 80 to 85% margins, which makes it very possible to have a small team operating out of here, but building a very large business. If I take a look at all the different SaaS players in Bangladesh right now, combine all of them, the ARR, the annual recurring revenue that they're operating, is still very minuscule, right? Less than 50 million. I haven't found a single SaaS company which generates more than 20 million ARR, right? Compared to, let's say, Pakistan, which has at least 4 of them, right? I'm not even going to India. India is massive. We already know that. But let's compare ourselves to something like Pakistan or Thailand or Vietnam, and they're much further ahead than we are. We have a developed engineering talent base that we can actually use to not just outsource products, not just make products for someone else, right, and let them reap the benefits of our hard work. But if we develop our talent, our growth talent, our product talent, then we can start building products for ourselves, right? And again, like, the thing that is stopping us really just is that having that vision that, hey, I'm not just going to, charge $20 an hour for my engineering talent, but I'm going to work hard for a year, 2 years, however long it takes, and build something that I can sell continuously to other people. And I think we are uniquely positioned to do this, right? People over here in this audience and even outside, we now have a more English-speaking audience, right? We don't have, let's say IITs, but that being said, our talent is not that bad, right? And this is a very digital approach of building a business, right? This is very digital first. Every tool that we need is available for everyone, right? How to build a SaaS, how to do, SEO copywriting, how to do, how to build a good product, how to build a good landing page. All of these tools are available. All of this knowledge is available. Even how do we get to those customers? We get to those customers through digital means. These are things that we can do from here, right? And that's something that we can prioritize on. So, when we are talking about different markets, different segments, how should we think about, approaching the right customer profile? Number one, I think, we have to break this down. We have to break every niche down by both demographics and geography, right? What is this a demographic? Now, if we are, again, taking on that Freshdesk example, right? If we were to try to recreate Freshdesk, it won't really help us because, Freshdesk is already sort of a copy of a Zendesk, right? They're already serving, they already have cheap talent, which they are using to make the software. If we just copy Freshdesk, we're not going to get far because people are going to just continuously compare us. Hey, do I buy Zendesk? Do I buy Freshdesk? Do I buy, I don't know, Bangladesk? What do we want to buy, right? And because these products have gotten so far ahead, right, because they have been building this product for 10, 15, 20 years, it is not possible for you to recreate that exact experience with the resources that you have just because of how much time they have already spent on it, right? So let's not try to recreate another Zendesk or another Freshdesk. Let's try to find a niche of a niche, right? Instead of targeting, let's say, a segment for marketing, we can target, marketing for lawyers, right? Or how about marketing for influencers? Or even, we are having a startup summit, why not marketing for events, right? So then when I'm, let's say marketing for an event, I'll just look for marketing for events, and because of that right niche, if I am actually marketing for an event, more people who are looking for this service are going to are going to find me, right? And they're not going to go to someone else. So finding the right niche is very important. I think someone on the last panel said that, you have to go niche, but you can go too niche. And this is where you have to really understand what that really means, right? You can also break this down by geography, right? Where are you targeting? Bangladesh, for a lot of reasons, which I mentioned, doesn't really work. But that doesn't mean other countries. That doesn't mean the first country you have to look to is, let's say, North America, right? There are other high-income countries. Europe is a huge SaaS market, right? MENA region right now is also growing to be a huge SaaS market. These people, again, have the propensity to buy. They are high-income countries, and also the willingness to buy. There's also more newly industrialized countries such as Singapore, Taiwan, even South Korea. They are also great markets because these people can afford to buy your software, right? Probably, even though, let's say, Singapore is a smaller country, more people are probably going to be able to buy your software than more people in Bangladesh, right? That's how you can look into this. So, how do you reach out to these customers, right? And again, it depends on the type of business you are, and you have to adjust your go-to-market strategy accordingly, right? If you are, let's say, targeting enterprise software, right, then the best way to go to them is through channel partners. What are channel partners? Channel partners are basically allies, right? These people are selling to the same segment that you are selling, but they're not competing with you, right? And good example of this is, MyAlice, right? Where, MyAlice helps with e-commerce support software. There are people who build e-commerce websites, and a company like MyAlice partners up with these e-commerce builders so that when these people are building a website for their final customer, they're likely to bundle an e-commerce support software through them, right? So finding these channel partners could be a very good win-win way of getting into the right customers. If you are targeting MSMEs, right? Again, I'll draw the example of MyAlice, where you can, I believe they have plugins in Shopify and other websites. So when SMEs, they're the ones who are building their websites. When they go to Shopify and they search for e-commerce support, MyAlice comes up, right? When they're sending a email blast that about Shopify integrations, MyAlice is there, right? So they're also leveraging their other partners, larger partners, to reach out to a whole segment of customers, right? One thing to note over here is that there are some very large businesses that pop up from just building plugins, right? So Olio, which was Joom Shaper, and now I think one of the larger SaaS companies out of here, or WeDevs, which sell primarily WordPress plugins, right? They became very large businesses not by building their unique software, end-to-end software, right? They just supported other ecosystem partners, right, like WordPress, and they became a very large business just by doing that, right? So just because you want to make a SaaS software doesn't mean you have to, again, do the entire thing, build everything end to end. You can leverage on top of other platforms, right, and reach their customers. For SMEs, content marketing is the cheapest and the easiest way to get inbound interest from customers, right? I know another example I gave was, okay, yeah. So, there's a marketing for lawyers. So you need to have a lot of blog posts about marketing for lawyers. So whenever someone is, looking for that, they come to your blog post and then they find your product, right? Community is also, marketing is also important, especially for retail. I think this is where Funded Next has done an amazing job, right? where they have, even before they launched their product, they built a community on Discord, on Facebook, and got those customers, got their inputs, and gave them a lot of free value. So, and then when they actually launched their product, they were able to leverage their existing customer base, right, which they have already supported. Now, finally, how big is this opportunity, right? Bangladesh has, reports over $50 billion in exports in RMG, right? This is one of the top two international remittance corridors. And we say that, hey, $50 billion coming in, amazing job, RMG, right? Uh, Compared that to, let's say, India, India has $13 billion of annual revenue just from the SaaS segment, right? So just the B2B, just the SaaS category is 1/5, more than 1/5 of the entire Bangladesh RMG sector, right? That's how big the opportunity can be. And again, like most of those customers are not in India, right? They're going after North American countries. Pakistan has, I mentioned, more than four companies, which has over 20 million in ARR. And they are getting large exits. Recently, a company called Cloudway in Pakistan got acquired in an all-cash transaction, right, by DigitalOcean. It was valued at $350 million, right? And that's amazing, right? We don't have a company of that size yet, right? If you look at companies such as, let's say NewsCred, right? They're probably up there. They go the closest, right? But even for companies like NewsCred, they just have an engineering team over here, but they have, the sales teams outside, right? So it is definitely possible, right? We need that right kind of entrepreneurs. We have those right kind of, we have this talent to do that. And that brings us a reason for hope, right? So, apart from all of this, I think one of the questions in the last segment was about funding, right? Can you get funding for this type of companies over here? And I wholeheartedly believe that you can. It's hard, but you can, right? WindApp, I believe we received the largest pre-seed funding of any company in Bangladesh so far, right? We raised more than $4 million just with an idea itself. And we did that during COVID times while I was sitting in Bangladesh, just with Zoom and Google Meet, right? So again, it's possible. You just have to, just grind it out, and you have to push that further. So finally, I'll leave you with this note, right? That, this is a Bangladesh Startup Summit. We are going to talk a lot about Bangladeshi startups and, just focusing on the Bangladeshi market. But that's not the only thing that I want to leave you guys with. I want you guys to think about that. Do we have the talent to reach out to these international customers? I believe we do, right? I think there are examples of other people who says and has done it. And the question really is that how many people over here has the vision to actually go and do it? Thank you very much.